Good morning. Welcome to the next edition of DGI. We are in episode number 224. Today is August 13th, the Friday, as we wrap up the week. We have a lot to cover. We will jump straight into the global news. Chinese regime blames Russia as the source of recent COVID-19 spikes. This is going to draw the ire from the Russians. I think it looks like China wants to blame anybody and everybody other than itself. Believe it or not, the shutdown was in Wuhan, which is the center for the major laboratory called Wuhan Institute of Virology, which seems to be the source of COVID-19. China building third new field for their intercontinental ballistic missiles. It looked like China has a relentless pursuit to arm itself to the teeth. I'm not sure what confrontation they're preparing and with whom. It seems like, they want to crack the world. But again, this is another issue that is going to come to haunt the Xi Jinping regime. There's no surprise here. The Hong Kong population outflow has continued to increase after the crackdown, and there has been more than 90,000 people who have left Hong Kong in the recent past, reflecting that everybody respects democratic principles, and that generally is the norm within the Chinese regime, controlled by CCP. There's no surprise, Cambodia is drawn closer to China as we complete 1 year after EU imposed sanctions on them. This is notwithstanding the fact that the US trade efforts has been towards Cambodia and to smoothen the relationship and make sure they can draw them away from China, but not seem to be having much impact. We again covered yesterday where we talked about how US needs to expand its reach in ASEAN and to further its commitment and demonstrate its commitment and not be restrictive in its scope. Cambodia is a good example. Given the confrontation that Japan faces on one side from China and the other side from Russia, Prime Minister Suga says that he is not bound by 1% of GDP cap on defense spending. He feels that he has to build, not he feels, the world also acknowledges that Japan has to build a formidable not only deterrence but an offensive capability to protect itself and the adjacent islands, including Taiwan. Therefore, 1% cap on GDP is not very relevant. Taiwan's Foxconn plans to build EV plants in US and Thailand in 2022. Again, we talked about how Taiwan is expanding the chip plants and how countries like Singapore are catching up fast. But Taiwan's expansion, especially Foxconn expansion of the EV plants, is a symbol and is also a sign that it is preparing itself to be an independent. When I say independent country, formal recognition, countries are recognizing one after the other. If you recall, Lithuania just opened an embassy and China has recalled the ambassador or the high commissioner from Lithuania. That's an example. So industrial expansion, footprint around various parts of the world who are the strategic allies of Taiwan makes it at least an important component of the Chinese deterrence. Not that you can hold back, but at least there is an element. So anyway, the Foxconn plant's expansion is one indication. Over 100,000 hectares burned as Greece faces ecological disaster from wildfires. We talked about this 2 days ago as to how these wildfires have reached the footsteps of Athens, and fortunately some of the key monuments and important landmarks, including the Olympic Stadium or Olympia Stadia, has been preserved and protected. But it is clearly a sign of bad things if the fires continue to burn. A number of countries have reached out, including Israel, providing assistance and help to put these fires down. Europe and Asia, there is a consistent theme that is the expansion of the COVID Delta variant. As one looks at across Europe, you have slow but steady rising cases across continental Europe, and we have seen some of it in Britain as well. But you see more of it in Asia. Asia clearly today is the epicenter of the Delta variant. Doesn't matter whether it is China, whether it is Taiwan, whether it is Japan, whether it is Vietnam, whether it is Indonesia. There seems to be a consistent pattern of growing cases, and they're not able to contain it. As far as the, at least for the present, Singapore seems to be the only place where not only there is a progressive vaccination drive, but also an element of containment. Of course, Singapore is a small nation. Moving to the most important news, the Taliban has captured Herat province. This is the 11th provincial capital that has fallen, and in Herat, all prisoners have been released who were locked up in the prisons over the past few years. It puts to end all the good work that has been done by the NATO and the US administration, and one must add the Afghan forces. But all of no avail, as these guys get back into the society and they are likely to create havoc. Recognizing this, as you all know, many high commissions, many embassies have taken precautionary measures to evacuate their nationals and diplomats. US joins this list, and it is to send 3,000 troops, including a Marine Corps, to Kabul to protect and evacuate the US diplomats. Getting to the Middle East, there's no surprise again here. There was an Iranian drone spotted near the Lebanon border. Israel's IDF shoots it down. So this triple I, which we talked about, Israel, Iraq, and Iran, is going to be a source of continuous skirmish with Syria and Lebanon stuck in the middle. And as you all know, Syria is supported by the Russians. Moving to the US news, the defund police movement loses steam and fund police gains momentum in a bipartisan support in Senate. So a Democrat joined, 6 Democrats joined the Republicans in the Senate in voting down this defund police movement and supporting expansion of funds for recruiting additional police as homicides and crimes rise across various cities in United States, and the crime has spurred up, especially under the present Biden administration. Why? It's $1 million question. Senate Democrats who lost this rewrite of the election law, they vow to hold another vote again to do this massive rewrite with no changes. Let's see what happens. I don't believe that this is going to happen, because sane Democrats are going to recognize that doing anything is going to be constitutionally illegal, setting up a confrontation between the state and the federal structure. So therefore, what would that lead to? It's anybody's guess. Biden is confident that Congress will raise the debt ceiling while claiming victory on his infrastructure plan. It's natural, it's a political victory. Infrastructure has been, the bipartisan 1.2 trillion has been passed. The 3.5 trillion budget expansion, a framework was passed on partisan lines with no support from Republicans, but all Democratic votes. But there's much work to be done. Nancy Pelosi has stated that she will review both the framework as well as the plan passed by the Senate for the infrastructure on August 23rd before they go for recess. She is very clear that she is not going to pass the infrastructure plan until she is able to get the mandate on the budget. But it remains to be seen whether these Democrats will allow that, or they would want the infrastructure plan to be passed first so that some of the capital needs can be addressed immediately. But this 3.5 trillion, there is going to be a long set of actions, debates, amendments before it is framed into a law and the bill is passed, because this is not a one-off event. This will have consequences on the future budget, especially on the expense side, as well as on the revenue side with tax increases, which is rammed in across various sectors or various segments of the income, both from personal and corporate taxes. So this is a long-winded action, and it's going to take a few months before we see the light at the end of the tunnel as to what form this is going to come in. Biden says inflation is temporary, and notwithstanding the fact that it was 5.4%, we reported that yesterday, and it continues to rise. Department of Justice urges state high courts not to lift eviction moratoriums in the middle of a pandemic crisis. They say that there is a rental crisis, there is a shortfall by way of income because many have not returned to work. There's more than 1 million jobs openings and no takers as yet. So Department of Justice urges state high courts, please do not ban the eviction moratorium because it was just passed, taking into account the difficulties of the people. It remains to be seen. On the other side, you have, I think again we have covered this in our daily global insights. You have homeowners and real estate agents saying, already we have lost close to $15 billion. So how long this is going to be sustainable in the absence of any form of support? Unlike all of the programs, there's been no support on the supply side. Everything has been on the demand side. Pathetic and embarrassing. Biden asking OPEC to lift oil output while shutting down all the oil pipelines in the United States, say the oil experts. It is quite a ridicule to say, OPEC countries, you lift oil productions, whereas we are going to shut our pipelines. How in the world you're going to reduce the global warming? How are you going to enforce climate control when you believe you are selfish in pursuit of your own agenda, but while you are asking the other people, to blow more, to pump more, to drill more fuel and supply it to various parts of the world? It's not consumed by the OPEC countries. It is OPEC produces, but one of the other consumers is United States. So therefore, it's very contrarian and quite a embarrassing move by Mr. Biden. Department of Homeland Secretary acknowledges rising COVID-19 cases with infected immigrants. Wow, that's a tragic admission. Namely to say, thus far he is denying it, and we have been reporting this almost with regularity. We have been reporting that they were not tested. We have been reporting that there is no quarantine process. We have been reporting that they are dumped into the communities and communities are not aware. So there is a whole set of chaos. All you need to do is look at the cases that has risen in Texas as well as in Florida. There may be some inferences that one can draw. These people are dumped into cities and states with no knowledge of anybody. Now, here comes the data. 40% of illegals released into the Texas city tested COVID-19 positive. Okay? 40% tested positive. What is the multiplier effect of these people getting integrated and mixing with the community members? Of course, Biden administration is oblivious. That is why there is a growing chorus for impeachment of Mr. Mayorkas, the DHS secretary. Total number of illegal aliens apprehended reaches an all-time high in July. This is a 21-month all-time high. In 1 month, July, it jumped to 213,000. We have already given the numbers of number of illegals who have entered United States in 2021 and the number likely to be by end of 2022 at the current rate. And that number exceeds 2.2 million. So this immigration is going to be a very, very big topic, along with the voting laws and along with this mega mother of all budgets. It's the grand deal, or the great deal. Trump lambasts Biden handling of Afghanistan, including unplanned withdrawal, as Taliban captures one provincial capital after another. So we have covered this both in the global section. So I don't want to, but it's just a Trump's endorsement or lambasting of Mr. Biden on the Afghanistan situation. Trump has again spoken against Biden on these voting laws. He has spoken on the budget. He has spoken on the China situation. He has spoken on the COVID situation. He has spoken on the critical race theory. So it's not just one, but it's a quagmire of issues that the Biden is hell-bent on pursuing as part of the progressive agenda. Now, coming to Dr. Fauci, he admits that everybody will need vaccine booster shot eventually. So we have been, soft pedaling. We have now come to the conclusion that eventually these vaccine doses are going to taper in terms of their effectiveness or efficacies, eventually warranting a need for a booster. Looks like a great business, and it also looks like this variant has been introduced. And as we reported yesterday, one of the experts in this field, who is also an advisor to Mr. Biden and also to Mr. Trump in the prior period, has acknowledged that this is not going to go away. This is going to sit with us like cold and influenza, because it is not restricted to a specific country like polio or smallpox. We transition from US news to India news. India's inflation eased to 5.59% in July, says the CEA and the finance minister, which is not bad. Recovery not yet at a point for pulling back liquidity, says finance minister. This is the austerity or stimulus programs that India continues to, what we call, trickle feed into the economy, and various sectors. They have been doing credit expansion and PLI type of programs to make sure that there is liquidity in the system, and there is also program level support offered by the government. India's Commerce and Industry Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, indicated that all FTA, that is foreign trade agreements, will be signed only after due consultation. Free trade agreements, not foreign, free trade agreements will be signed only after due consultations with India Inc. So India Inc. had made a representation that there is a significant capital and other types of investments that have been made, and to be cognizant that there is no undercutting of the prices as they sign these free trade agreements. India could build more than 500 tech firms, making more than 5K crores in revenue, says the new tech minister. I think they have to harness the startup ecosystem. I think myself and Mohan Das Pai, we covered on what the startup ecosystem can offer to the Indian economy and the Indian industry. I think Mr. Prime Minister Modi has also spoken about it. So it is good that they have extremely competent tech experts now manning that ministry. Bangalore-Mysore highway to be constructed by 2022, making the travel to the twin cities less than 90 minutes from the current 3.5 hours. It's a 10-lane Bangalore-Mysore highway that will be constructed and ready by 2022. This would be a remarkable accomplishment. So in fact, somebody can live in Mysore and travel to Bangalore almost on a daily basis, and probably do work, because 90 minutes is not that bad a travel, especially if you have a 10-lane highway. India to also upgrade its toll plazas with GPS-based tolling systems, which effectively means that it'll make the system even more faster and efficient. And I think there has been, if my numbers are correct, there has been a 90% adoption rate in terms of this e-pass mechanism, so that you can seamlessly travel from one point to the other crossing these tollway booths. Health Minister Mr. Mandavia is to meet WHO chief scientist to seek Covaxin approval. Remember, we talked about Covaxin submitted for approval with WHO. I think it is probably in its final stages. And once it is done, then you will have Covaxin, approved as a vaccine, and that can be exported to a number of countries. Right now, most of the countries have what we call as the emergency approval process, or urgent emergency approval process, under which vaccines have been approved. Mandates are being granted so that they become fully approved vaccines for deployment. When they become fully approved, then there is a whole set of rules and parameters that come into play. So Covaxin wants to be recognized as a global vaccine. Dr. Jaishankar says pandemic exposed lack of basic manufacturing in India, and that gap is being addressed by various schemes. This is things like, and I think again we have covered this in Daily Global Insights, manufacturing bulbs to air conditioners to small things that is so endemic and needs of a vast market like India. Importing each one of this is a very expensive process, especially when economy contracts during pandemic type of situation. And if it is locally made, it makes it much more fungible in terms of its availability and usability. India's vaccine doses crossed 530 million. That's a very impressive number. We have been reporting every day 500, 515, 530. And yesterday, the vaccinated numbers crossing 5.6 million. That again is a very big number, very positive sign. India's active cases drops to 388,000 or 387,987. But the total cases again rose past the 40,000. It was 41,195. And the discharged was 39. So there was a little uptick of close to 1,600 or 2,000 cases roughly on the net increase in the active cases. That's something that India needs to keep a close watch as the Delta variant also makes its way into India. With that, we wrap up all the main news items. We go to markets. In the markets, S&P and Dow reached new records as stock finished higher. For most of the day, the stocks were lower yesterday, but they moved higher on the back of what we call as rotation back in the midst, with tech, healthcare, and e-commerce stocks edging higher. In the case of tech, one can say Apple and Microsoft and Salesforce certainly helped the case in marginally moving the stocks up. Crypto rockets past 2 trillion market valuation. We saw the numbers yesterday, in the yesterday's DGI, which is the day before yesterday's numbers, with the three major coins rising in value. Coming to the market data, Dow Jones finished 35,499, 14.88 points up. S&P up 4,460, 13.13 up. Nasdaq finished 14,816, 51.13. Oil, again, was trading below 70. The crude was at 68. Brent was at 71.18. We saw marginal dips in prices. US 10-year bond, marginally very small movement, 1.361% from 1.35 yesterday. Bond 10-year was 0.45 and Japanese 10-year yen was 0.016. The Bitcoin and Ethereum dropped marginally. Bitcoin went below 45. It's at 44,497. Ethereum at 3068. Just to give you an indication of we are in pandemic and we have plenty of stimulus and we have inflation confronting. We are going to do a small piece as to why the markets continue to climb in a pandemic and why the markets are where they are today relative to where they are today into 2020. If you see the chart, the S&P 500 chart, we have moved up from January 1st, somewhere around 3,760 to about, you can see the number, 4460. That's roughly 700 points up. close to about 18.66% up year to date without dividends. This is pure mark. When you add the dividends, we could be close to 20% up year to date as at August 12th, 2021. Inflation is still a worry, and Delta variant is still a worry, but let us see how the markets respond in the days and months ahead. With that, we wrap up today's edition of Daily Global Insights, episode number 224. We look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow morning as we wrap up the week. Thank you and namaskar.